Surprise, surprise, the Kansas City Chiefs are still adding players. Welcome to the Scrambling Armchair Chiefs news, analysis, and opinion every day. The Kansas City Chiefs have elected to sign a defensive end. They have signed Janarius Robinson, and we will get into some. So I think that this is a very interesting pick for a lot of reasons, or not pick, signing for a lot of reasons. Uh, it's a player who you will not realize at first, perhaps, that you know, Janarius Robinson. And we'll get into that in a moment. In an article titled Chiefs Sign Defensive End Janarius Robinson, subtitle Kansas City has added a former fourth-round pick to their defensive end room from Arrowhead Pride by Peter Giuseppe Sweeney. We get the following. I skipped a lot of the opening of the article in order to get this, which I think is the most relevant points that I'm not going to cover later. In 16 games, 3 starts for the Raiders over 2 seasons, Robinson compiled 13 tackles, 7 solo, including 1.5 sacks. So, not the most high-end signing, I agree. Not a whole lot of statistical production here, that's true. But we're going to get into a little bit of why this could be, maybe not an exciting signing, but a signing that has some upside. But first, let's deal with some downside. In February 2024, Robinson was arrested and charged with a misdemeanor DUI in Las Vegas after he allegedly struck a woman with his vehicle. So keep him away from Rashee Rice. In December, Robinson was suspended for the final 3 games of the NFL season for violating the league's substance abuse policy. So there's that as well. Who is Janarius Robinson? He's out of Florida State. He was a former 4th-round pick, 134th overall in the 2021 NFL Draft by the Minnesota Vikings, where he would play 2021 and part of 2022. He was picked up by Philadelphia for the rest of 2022 and spent 2023 and 2024 with the Raiders. Not the most ringing of endorsements, I understand. And then if we get into his snap counts, he has only accrued snaps with the Raiders. So he did not play at all for the team that drafted him in 2021, the Minnesota Vikings. He did not see the field for the Eagles. I believe he was just on the practice squad for the Eagles. He played 78 snaps in 2023, starting 2 games. He played 109 snaps in 2024, starting 1 game. That is 16 appearances total. He also added snaps on special teams. That, I believe, is his floor for the Kansas City Chiefs. I do believe there is a chance that he makes the 53-man roster and becomes one of those core special teamers. Now, I said you might not realize that you might know Janarius Robinson. And a lot of what I'm going to be doing in this video is selling the upside, right? I think that's a fair way to deal with it. Anytime the Kansas City Chiefs sign a player, you address the possibilities, however it is that you see them fit. I think it's unlikely that Janarius Robinson becomes a starter for the Kansas City Chiefs, for example, but you sell the upside. What is it that Brett Veach sees in Janarius Robinson that made him make this signing? But because I'm going to do that, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time doing that, I think that it is necessary to further address the tale of caution here. Joshua Keough. You remember Joshua Keough? Maybe you don't, and that's part of the problem. Joshua Keough proves a tale of caution here. Joshua Keough was selected 10 picks after Janarius Robinson, also out of Florida State, also in the 2021 NFL Draft. They were buddies on that defensive line. And I remember, I couldn't find anything sort of directly talking about it, but I remember being excited about the Joshua Keough selection. I thought he was overdrafted, but I thought that it was an interesting pick because if memory serves me correctly, and again, I couldn't find anything about it, that 2021 defensive line for Florida State was very good. Now, Jeremy, The next year, 2022, Jermaine Johnson was selected 26th overall. He was a defensive end from that same defensive line. But I remember being fairly excited because that defensive line looked really good for Florida State. And they had, in the fourth round of that 2021 draft, both of their defensive ends available selected, neither of whom did anything for the team that selected them. Joshua Keough, by the way, and we'll get into the measurables for Janarius Robinson, very stunningly similar to Joshua Keough. 6'5", a little over 6'5", 6'5 and 3/4, 260 pounds, 34.5-inch arms, 4.68 40-yard dash, a 36.5-inch vert, a 10-foot 5-inch broad jump, and 21 reps on the bench press. Joshua Keough went on to be waived by the Kansas City Chiefs unceremoniously in 2023 before the 2023 NFL season, meaning he spent 2021 and 2022 with the Kansas City Chiefs, much like Janarius Robinson spent 2021 and 2022 with the Vikings. So that's the tale of caution. Despite the fact that he looked good in college, he looked solid in college, and he was very big, had all of the tools and measurables, Joshua Keough washed out in the NFL. So why have the Kansas City Chiefs made this signing? Well, Robinson has not accomplished much of anything in his 4 seasons in the NFL, so I'm not trying to make this sound like a franchise-altering signing, but when you look at his athletic profile, mixed with what it is that Spags likes to do and likes to have from his defensive ends, this could be a signing that moves the needle from a snap count standpoint. 6'5 and 3/8, 263 pounds, 35.25-inch arms, 10 and 7/8-inch hands. These tools right here, those hands, and though at the ends of those arms are significant. A 4.68 or 4.69 40-yard dash. See all these similarities. A little over 6'5", 260 pounds, very long arms. Keough was 34.5. Janarius Robinson's 35, 9.5-inch hands. Robinson has much larger hands, 4.68 40 with a 1.58 split, 4.69 40 with a 1.64 split. 34-inch vertical leap, however, for Robinson, 10-foot 1-inch broad jump, and 25 reps on the bench press. These are great tools for a defensive end. The size here alone, nearly, basically 6'5.5", with 35-inch arms, 35.25-inch arms. These are tools that if he can put them to use, along with, look, 25 bench press reps, not record-breaking, but at 35.25-inch arms length, that's a good number. That's a lot of power being generated there. So if he can be coached up a little bit, he can be a contributor. So just to sort of compare here, I have George Karlaftis pulled up here. He is 2 inches taller than George Karlaftis. He's about the same weight. He has a 3-inch arm advantage over George Karlaftis. George Karlaftis, who at one point led the NFL in batted passes, he has about a 1/2 inch bigger hands than George Karlaftis. He is 3/100ths of a second faster in the 40. He's 1/100th of a second faster in the 10-yard split. They're about the same on the 20-yard split. He's much slower at the 20-yard short shuttle. So that's what has helped George Karlaftis in his career, that 20-yard short shuttle. Once he plants his foot and takes the corner, he's got a good chance. That is not so much for Robinson. Karlaftis had a 4-inch better vertical. They had the same broad jump, and Janarius Robinson did 4 more reps on the bench press. So Karlaftis is a little bit more explosive of an athlete, but guys, Janarius Robinson has a lot of the tools. Comparing further, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this so that we have on the same screen Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Janarius Robinson is 2 inches taller than Felix. He is 10 pounds heavier than Felix. He has 2-inch longer arms, 1 inch on hand length. The short shuttle, they're comparable. And then you have the same vertical leap, and you have a broad jump where FAU outdoes him by 3 inches. But FAU has done stunningly little so far in his career. I think there is an upside with FAU. We see him pop on screen every once in a while, so that is to be taken into consideration. But Robinson, what are we getting with Robinson on the field? Well, just looking at him and watching him play a little bit, he should be fairly solid against the run. He is a very solidly built guy. He is a very compact. He's very compact at 6'5". You go back. I went back and I watched a video of him training for, I don't remember if it was pro day or the combine. I don't know if he went to the combine, where he's doing his 40 without a shirt on. You don't want that man running at you. Very large, very scary, very big guy. And he's not fat, right? You're looking at a 260-pound man that is just muscle. Now, that doesn't always translate onto the field, and obviously to this point in his career, it has not. But it's worth noting, right? If you can figure a way to tap into that potential, you have something. Now, Robinson is not a violent tackler, but it's interesting because though he's not a violent tackler, he's not someone who shoots out at people. He's not someone who leaps at them, right? You've got these safeties that sometimes make these just back-cracking hits because they're leaving their feet and exploding into the player. He doesn't do that. But because of his size and his musculature, he hits like a ton of bricks. You can watch all of these tackles that he made at the college level, and the people end up looking like bobbleheads because he is so solid running into them that their heads are just jarred. And hasn't translated to the NFL, but it could, right? I really do believe that there is potential in this signing. Now, he seemingly only has one pass rush move, and it's not really a pass rush move. What he does is he kind of plants his neck into the offensive tackle's armpit and gets upfield and then turns the corner. Not very effective. It's not very effective in the NFL at the NFL level. 1.5 sacks over 4 years. That's what you can say about that. However, he's got strength, 25 reps on the bench press. He's got size, 260 plus pounds. He has arm length, 35.25-inch arms, if he can be taught. One pass rush move. Just one. Doesn't matter which one. And he can put his hand into a tackle's chest and keep one arm free for the run. This could be a contributor. And I think that's all you're really asking from this type of a signing. Now, where does this fit in with the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, when you're looking at overall roster construction, I believe what the Chiefs wanted to have happening by now was they had a UDFA named Truman Jones from the Ivy League, and he had a lot of promise coming out. He was a little undersized, if memory serves me correctly, but he had a lot of promise. He had a lot of sacks racked up in college, all of these things. I think that because that move didn't work out, they are now minus that bottom of the roster slot at their edge position. That's where you have to bring in somebody off of the street because you weren't able to develop that UDFA guy from a couple years ago. This is probably right around on the roster, that bottom of the defensive line room, where they wanted Jones to be by now. Now, what does this do for the Kansas City Chiefs? Just from a tools perspective alone, pretend Janarius Robinson finds his way onto the 53. At this point, it looks like he's a bottom of the rotation guy. Great, fine. Where you would have had someone who was questionably an NFL player on the roster, and frankly, that's kind of where Janarius Robinson finds himself too, questionably an NFL player. If you're going to have someone on the field who might not be an NFL player, he better be a guy who has NFL measurables, right? So if you had, say, pretend, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that hypothetical, but you have a guy on the roster who's a 6'3" defensive end with 33-inch arms and is a questionable NFL talent versus a guy who is 6'5" plus with 35-inch arms. Which player gives you a better chance to make the play? Even if they are completely comparable around the board. The guy with the better tools, 2 inches taller, 3 inches greater reach, that's the guy who gives you the chance. This is where this team is at. This team right now doesn't have to really go to free agency to sign the guy who's going to make the team better for 50 snaps per game. You've got that core. You've got that base. If you can make the team better for 5 snaps a game, right? We saw those numbers earlier for Janarius Robinson playing 10 snaps per game for the Raiders. If you can make the team better for those 5 snaps, 10 snaps per game, that can equal out to, pretend it's just one win during the course of a season. One more win during the course of a season because you have the 5 guys at the bottom of your roster providing higher quality snaps than the 5 guys the previous year. That can be the difference between a home game in the playoffs and being the road team. That can be the difference between 1 or 2 plays in the playoffs that gets you 1 game further, right? So it is nice to still be talking about a team that is making signings to improve slots 45 through 53 on the roster. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.